right, back with another video. We're going to do midpoint. So midpoint is also super important, cannot talk, with coordinates. And so midpoint, I made up a song. I really just got it off YouTube, but it really stuck in the kids' mind, even though I embarrassed them and did a really crazy dance with it, but I can't really dance right now, so I'm going to sing it for you. Hopefully it gets stuck in your mind. So we did the best song ever, and it's midpoint, midpoint. What do? Add them together and divide by 2. So you can rewind and keep playing it back and forth. Put it as a ringtone on your phone. I do not care. That would also be helpful, and then you can use that song and play it over and over in your head when you're doing midpoint, because it actually helps. The formula, again, based off the song, is actually you add them together. So you add the coordinates, all your x's together, add them together and divide by 2, and then your y's. So y1 and y2. And then you divide them by 2. Add them together, divide by 2, and then you have a midpoint coordinate. So your midpoint is its own coordinate, and you're finding with 2 other coordinates, you're finding the middle coordinate of it. So you add the x's together, divide by 2, add the y's together, and divide by 2. So for the first example, find the midpoint of segment GH given the coordinates. So first we're going to label them, x1, y1, x2, y2, and then just to find the midpoint, we are going to add them together and divide by 2. So we're going to add all my x's, so I have x1, and then my x2, divide by 2, and then both of my y's. So we have -5 plus -1, or plus a -1, which actually turns it into a -1 this time, since you're adding, and divide by 2. And since these are in parentheses because it's a coordinate, now all we do is the PEMDAS rule. So simple math, we have 7 plus 9, which is 16, divided by 2, and -5 minus 1, which is -6, divided by 2. And then we need to simplify. So 16 divided by 2 is 8, and -6 divided by 2 is -3. So my midpoint is 8, -3. So now what I want you to do is I want you to try number 2 on your own. So pause the video and then unpause it, and I will show you the answer and we'll go over it. Alright, so the answer to this, I labeled all of my coordinates, x1, y1, x2, y2. I added all my x's together, so -7 plus 3 divided by 2, and then 4 minus, or plus a -4, which is 4 minus 4 divided by 2. And then I came down here, and they're still in a coordinate, so they're still in parentheses. So -7 plus 3 is -4 divided by 2, and 4 minus 4 is 0 divided by 2. Remember, if a 0 is on the bottom of a fraction, then it's undefined. There's an error. But if it's on top, it's always 0. So if I come and simplify, we got -4 divided by 2, which is -2, and 0 divided by 2, which is 0. So it's -2, 0 as my answer. So now this example is actually, it was challenging to students last year, so make sure you're paying attention to this part especially. You're finding a missing endpoint. So in these examples, they give you the actual midpoint, and they give you just one of the coordinates, and then you have to find the other coordinate instead of finding the midpoint. They already gave that to you. So I'm going to teach you a little trick that I like to think of. Is we're going to divide this into an x column and then a y column. Okay, so we're going to first do all of our x's. Now, this is a little different than our midpoint. This is finding a missing endpoint. So what we're going to do is we are going to first put all of our x's. So we have an x coordinate from our midpoint. So I put that on my outside, my x midpoint. And then I do my regular midpoint formula. So I do all my x's from my coordinates. So I have my 3x, and then I'm missing another x because we don't have that coordinate. So there's an x that's missing, and then I divide it by 2. I add them together and divide by 2. And then for my y's, we're just setting up here, I take my y value of my midpoint, which is 2, and then I take all my other y's that I have. I only have one other one, which is -5, and we have to add my missing y and then divide it by 2. So now all we're doing is simplifying these. So first we have this equation right here, okay? So to get the 2 off the bottom of a fraction, we can multiply both sides by 2. So I can multiply this side by 2 and this side by 2, so these cancel out, and I have -2 equals 3 plus x2. So now we can find x2 by just a simple algebraic equation. So to get it by itself, I subtract 3 onto the other side. I do the opposite operation, and I have -5 equals x2. And then the same thing on the y part, I multiply both sides by 2 to get the 2 off the bottom, so those cancel out. So I have 2 times 2, which is 4, and then -5 plus y2. And then to get y2 by itself, I have to do the opposite operation of a negative, so I need to add 5 on both sides. And so I have 4 plus 5, which is 9, equals y2. So my missing endpoint, the coordinate would be -5, 9. And that is my answer. So now I want you to try number 2 on your own, and then we will go over the answer together. So pause your video. All right, so what I did is I took all my information and I put it on the side here so it's easier to look at. So we have our midpoint K, which is -5, 10, point L, -8, 6, and then my missing endpoint, which is J, so I put a question mark. And then for column X, we put all my x's. So we have -5x and my -8x, and then we're missing an x here. So I plug them all in. So -5, my midpoint x always goes on the opposite equation. And then my rest of my x's are -8 plus x squared divided by 2. So I need to get 2 off the bottom. So I multiply both sides by 2. I'm crossing them out. I have -10 equals -8 plus x squared. I add my 8, opposite operation on both sides. And now I have -2 equals x squared. And then I do the same thing on the other side. So I multiply both sides by 2. Those 2 cross out. So I have 20 equals 6 plus y2. I subtract my 6 on both sides. And I have 14 equals y2. So my final coordinate for my missing endpoint is -2, 14. All right, let's try number 3 on our own, and then we're going to go over those as well. So pause the video. All right, here we are with midpoint Q, which is -1, 3, endpoint P, which is 5, 6, and then R we do not know, so we are finding that. So that's our x2, y2. So we go to our x column and we plug in all of our x's. So we have -1, 5, and x2. Make sure your midpoint x is always on the other side of the equation. -1 equals, and then add them together and divide by 2. So we have 5 plus x squared divided by 2, and then you need to multiply 2 on both sides, and that's where we get -2 equals 5 plus x squared, and then subtract 5 on both sides, and then we have -7 as our x2. And then same thing on the other side, put all of our y's. So we have 3 equals, and then we have all of our other y's added together and divided by 2. So we have 3 equals 6 plus y2 divided by 2, multiply 2 on both sides. So we have 6 equals 6 plus y2, and we subtract 6 on both sides to get y2 by itself, and we have 0 equals y2. So our missing endpoint will be -7, 0. These will look a little bit different. These are more midpoint examples. You can draw. Visuals help, so I want everyone to draw a visual of what you look at. So if I'm looking at example 4, if P is the midpoint of XY, so this is XY, and P is the midpoint, so there's P in the middle, then XP is 8x minus 2, and PY is 12x minus 30. Find the value of x. Well, if the midpoint is P, that means these two parts are divided equally. That's what that dash means, is congruent or equal. So what do you probably need to do? You'll need to use a lot of algebra to figure out what x is if these both are equal to each other. So I want you to try that one on your own. And then I also want you to try 5 and 6 on your own as well, using what we've learned. And then we will go over those problems in our class meeting. See ya.